Gab Sutton, give us your 1 to 24 for League One next season.
Birmingham City are my title winners. I know I'm a Blues names myself, but I think they have got a fantastic squad, the like of which has barely been seen in League One before. And I think Alfie May is going to bring them the firepower, and I think Mark Leonard's going to dictate games at the base of midfield. So for me, Birmingham City to win the title. Bolton Wanderers second. I think they've got a good core of players. They've got some continuity from last season, which I think is really going to translate nicely into this campaign. And I think they're better covered this time around for injuries and absences of key players. So for me, Bolton Wanderers in second. Wigan Athletic just miss out on the automatic promotion spots for me in third. I think they've got a really exciting young squad. Watch out for goalkeeper Sam Tickle, because for me, he could be a future England number one. Charlton are fourth for me, with Nathan Jones being one of the best managers in the league. I think they've recruited well, and I expect them to make significant progress from last season. Huddersfield Town have only been able to release 2 players from their relegation squad last season, which isn't ideal, but they've also added good League One players, especially wing-back Lasse Sorensen from Lincoln, and I think they've got the best manager in the league in Michael Duff. So all that in mind, I think Huddersfield finish 5th. Last playoff spot for me goes to Lincoln City. They have lost key players, but I've got so much faith in Michael Skubala. I think he's a really exciting coach, and their spring form was just sumptuous. So if they can replace those key players, for me, Lincoln City are a runner at 6th. Reading, I think, could be dark horses. I have got them just missing out, though, in 7th. I think they've got a really exciting young coach in Ruben Sellers, a bit like I mentioned with Skubala. I think they've got a young group of players that have already had a year to develop, and they experienced a lot last season. A lot of them have international pedigree. And I also think that the ownership situation, if the takeover does happen, is actually going to work in their favour because of the mood about Dai Yong leaving the club. So for me, Reading 7th. Blackpool, I think, finish 8th. I like Neil Critchley. I think they've got a very good League One squad, and I think Jordan Rhodes is going to score the goals. But for me, they just miss out. Likewise, Wycombe Wanderers, who I think finished 9th. I think they've got a really solid core of League One players. Luke Leahy, who's very versatile, I really like, and Joe Lowe at the back. But for me, I don't think they've quite got enough creativity to get into the top 6. Rotherham United, I'm not as big on as other people. I think they're overrated a little bit because of how early they did their business, as opposed to necessarily how well they did it. For me, Rotherham United in 10th. Stockport County in 11th. I like their business. I think they've signed players who can make an impact in League One now after they won the title in League Two last season, but they've also got players who have got growth potential. So exciting project there at Stockport County, 11th for me. Stevenage in 12th, rounding off the top half. They've lost Steve Evans, only 1 or 2 first team players they've lost though, so I think continuity is well, especially with Ravel being an internal appointment, and I think Ravel will have learnt a lot from Steve Evans, so I don't see them dropping out of the top half. But I do see Peterborough dropping out of the top half, because I think they're due an off season after losing Harrison Burrows, Ronnie Edwards and Ephron Mason-Clark. I think it's a lot for them to replace that same star players and deliver the same results. So I think that's going to be a tough season for Peterborough. 13th for me. 14th, Leyton Orient. I really liked Richie Wellens after a top half finish last season, but with the league getting stronger, I think Leyton Orient could drop a few places, especially after losing Idris El Mizouni. Wrexham in 15th for me. I'm expecting them to strengthen later in the window, but it's difficult for me to go too far on that now because their spending, other than bringing in Lewis Brunt and Arthur Okonkwo, has actually been relatively modest, so not quite enough for me to go on to put Wrexham in my top half. Burton Albion in 16th, I expect significant progression from them from last season under Mark Robinson and a new ownership group who seem to have a plan for Burton Albion. So fresh ideas there. I think that was well needed. Barnsley for me, don't tell Joe Townsend here at Sporting Life. I've got them in 17th. I think they underachieved this season. They've got a great midfield, but I think other areas of the squad are a bit more in question, and I'm not quite sure about where the club's at in terms of the bigger picture. Bristol Rovers for me, 18th. I like some of their signings, especially Isaac Hutchinson from Walsall, who got double figures in both goals and assists last season. But they did lose 14 of the last 22 games last season, so not much in terms of momentum to build on from last season. 18th for me. 19th, Exeter City. They conversely did find really good form in the second half of last season, but I think their squad's going to be thin on senior players, and it's going to be all about whether Josh McGuinness can stay fit up top to be that spearhead. But they've lost 3 key defenders, which is going to hurt them, I think. Mansfield Town in 20th. I really like the Kinu Baki signing in midfield, but the age profile of the squad is a bit of a concern for me with the step up, so I think they'll just about stay up. Cambridge United have a manager in Gary Monk who's done well before, but he's had 3 years out of the game, and there's a little bit of uncertainty there, and I'm not quite sure that the squad is going to be good enough to keep them up. Northampton Town are in 22nd for me, also going down. I think they've lost 3 key players from last season, and Mark Leonard is going to sting the most, because I think for me he was such a vital player to the way they played last year, and I'm not sure they're going to cope without him. Shrewsbury for me in 23rd. They've gone to a legend in Paul Hurst, who got them into the playoffs at this level in 17-18, but I think as the league has evolved, both financially in terms of quality of management, I don't see Paul Hurst having that sort of impact, and I actually think they're going to be in for a bit of a struggle. 23rd for me, Shrewsbury. And 24th, Crawley Town, because especially I do see a world where Scott Lindsay leaves, because I'm not bit sceptical about the ownership situation. I love Scott Lindsay. I think he's done a brilliant job so far, but I don't think that the squad they've got is good enough for League One. So Crawley round off in 24th with going down.